the other thing that hasn't happened right to date is other companies trying to mimic or look at it. And right, if something works and consumers are buying it and there's something there, don't we tend to see other companies at least poke somebody? But nobody has. What is up, everybody? How you living? No putts given. Getting deep into December, which can only mean one thing, Tony. It can only mean one thing. It means
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus time. I thought you were going to say
Santa's
Elf on the
Claus.
Shelf.
Oh,
You still,
no.
your kids don't require any Elf on the Shelf, do they?
The child knows that the jig is up, and we've kind
What?
of joked
Don't.
that now it's
Don't.
her turn. Like, she's got to hide the elf.
Don't.
See how she likes that shit.
Mm-hmm. Well, other than Santa Claus time, I think this is it. Don't I think this is the end? The end of conforming list announcements of drivers from major manufacturers. Is that right? Have we?
There is a. I mean, it's not a secret. So GT1 has not been announced. GT1 has not been on the USGA and RNA conforming list, but GT1 is definitely coming. It's not a secret. Titleist pretty much told us back when 2, 3, and 4 came out that
and that
there'd
happened
be a
before
one.
with previous generations where GT1 came after the 2, 3, 4. But so Titleist says GT out. We've seen Ping again on the conforming list. It's a 440, right? We've seen last week we talked about Callaway Elite. Or Eli T or Elite. Or we'll see. But that appears to be the next one. So we got Ping, we got Titleist, we got Callaway, Cobra, and now we have TaylorMade.
We do have TaylorMade.
So let's talk through these again. What can we tell? What can't we tell? And for the love of everything, the first picture that we have up on the article is one of the sole. Is that a flux capacitor? I want that to be a flux capacitor.
I mean, I think they've just done some clever industrial design. It looks pretty good, but I'd say we have, kind of looking through the lineup, we have some obvious changes that are interesting, and a maybe change that's really interesting as well. The obvious one being the LS model. We've moved away from the signature Slater weight track. We're no longer sliding. We're just it's the flipper now. So we're going kind of that left-right Cobra style, if you will. And maybe, as I think this through, looking at what it's funny, some of the comments have been very much like the TaylorMade copied Cobra's homework.
I know.
But
I wanted to get into that, but so let's just.
But my question, real quick, is is there a third weight hidden back there?
Yeah, we can't.
And again, like you'd never know from the USGA photos kind of what they're working with. They're not doing a lot of tinkering, but from what I can tell from the pictures, what is visible are 2-3 gram weights.
Right.
And so, just mathematically, if I'm going to flip a 3 gram with a different 3 gram, I'm not sure I'm accomplishing much.
It's not going to do a whole lot.
So maybe there's a little something in the back there. We'll see.
Yeah. So let's start with this. So again, by all appearances, here we have QI35. It says on the sole. 3 models. Looks like we're kind of sticking with the same family setup. Yeah.
Yeah, it appears to be the case.
Okay. So 3 models: a Max, a Standard, and an LS.
And whether they wanted to or not, I mean, last year kind of TaylorMade nailed it. If they wanted to go, hey, here's the low spin, here's the mid spin, and here's the really high spin one.
Well, yeah, maybe
covered all the bases.
Maybe on purpose, maybe not. But yeah, I mean that's last year, right? Like I said, they took a foray into 10K. Obviously, the QI 10, kind of this quest for 10K of inertia. QI 35. I don't have any idea what the 35
Got
is with
nothing.
any inclination whatsoever.
No, I don't know. No idea, honestly. So that'll be when we talk to TaylorMade, which will be the day that this publishes.
True.
They'll be joining us in Virginia at
Yep.
headquarters. Like, we'll get that sorted, I'm sure. But
Yep.
right now, like, oh, that's weird. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's not linear. You don't go from 10 to 35, so that I'm sure there's something there. I don't know if this is the 35th iteration of something that it took them to get from the 10 to here. It took I'm just hoping it's tied into the flux capacitor. Like is it 35 gigawatts or something, or maybe?
Who knows?
I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, all right, let's start with the Max model. Yeah, what can we tell? What can't we tell? And kind of what are your biggest questions here? So,
Well, I mean, we know it's going to be a 10K MOI driver because they stamped, 10 kilograms per centimeter squared there,
right.
kg. So,
Yeah, so very clearly going after the 10K bit there. My guess would be on the very back. Again, we can't see it, but typically in these kind of designs, we get a fixed weight, a fixed heavy weight in the back because we want to keep as much.
I don't see anywhere to move a weight, so I'm gonna go with that being a fixed weight. Unless maybe the plan is you need to buy both the 10K and the LS if you want a weight swap. It's
Right.
the only way to do it. So
Yeah. But that would, again, because visually it looks very similar to the LS, that would also tend to lead me to believe that there's a weight back there that's swappability. Bunch of carbon on the ground, or carbon on the undercarriage, if you will.
yeah, it's going to be a lot of carbon on this one for sure. I mean,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
for sure, right? We're getting closer to the point where, I think maybe TaylorMade would love to get to a point where there's absolutely no titanium. I don't think we're there yet, but
Yeah. What if I mean, yeah, all carbon, because we know they got the carbon face. That appears to be, again, sticking around by all accounts. It says carbon on the face from early photos or whatever, so no reason not to think that that's still
yeah, I mean it is noted in the USGA description that there's carbon.
Okay.
Dot carbon dot is how it's noted. So yeah, carbon face continues.
Okay.
And it does look, this one was kind of interesting to me, just kind of like, hey, what's still out there? As I don't know to what extent people are aware, but Sim 2 has been in the market since it launched. Like, it's never gone away.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fair to assume that TaylorMade didn't botch projections to the tune of 3 years. Like, they have continued to produce that driver, I believe, as a low-cost alternative, as a titanium alternative, and it does starting to look like stock of that may finally be drying up.
Okay.
And so that's going to be, we could be finally in a place where there are no new titanium-faced TaylorMade drivers on the shelves.
Well, we can talk about the other models here for sure. I think, like I said, based on just the pictures, the easy, low-hanging fruit part of the story. Okay, Max, you got a 10K more forgiving one. Biggest question there would be, can they moderate the spin a little bit better? The previous version of their 10K, that was a bit of a swing and a miss in terms of managing that. The spin was higher than needed to optimally fit the majority of golfers. So did they get that right? Did they get the spin under control on this one is a question.
Yeah, I think to me that is, there's some cool stuff, right? We talked about the weights, and yeah, it would be nice if there's a third weight back there, and it would be nice if the standard model was flippable weights. That would be really nice too.
Mm-hmm.
But just in terms of pure performance, yeah, spin has to come down on the Max. Absolutely, positively has to come down.
Yep. I'd be shocked if it didn't. Like I said, I'd be shocked if it didn't do that. Like you said on the plane, you call it in the article the plain one. This is
It's
the meat of the market. Like you said, hopefully those are swappable. weight. Same thing on kind of the LS. Now you notice on the LS, right? That's the only one that has like the really defined flux capacitor. So again, I'm wondering maybe there's something fun there. But what are your biggest concerns and your biggest like what are you most looking forward to with these, and what are your hesitations or questions?
Yeah, so for me, again, looking forward to like the excitement, be like, hey, have we, especially with the plain one, right? Have we retooled the plain one so that now it does have movable weights, some more fitting adjustability, if you will, some kind
Yeah.
of opportunities to make it a little more versatile, I guess, and interesting too, because I think that's probably a struggle TaylorMade has run into over the years, where I think, right, you start to associate the one that has the movable weights as a premium option, a better option, a more fun option, something.
Mm-hmm.
And so to get it to the point where the perception is that it's on equal footing and that the technology platform is equivalent, and you're not giving up anything in terms
Right.
of, things to play with and move around
Right.
by not buying an LS. So I think that's an important piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Concerns, obviously, spin on the Max
Yep.
continues, right? Until you can prove to me you fixed it, like it's a concern. And then the other thing, I don't know about carbon faces. Like I know it was a big story. We talked about the 20-year journey and all that stuff,
Sure.
and Brian Basil at the time, TaylorMade's, he's heading up Metalwoods, I don't know, R&D. He stays busy, he moves around, he gets promoted, he does things like that. But anyway, at the time, he was like, this will be the Titleist, or excuse me, TaylorMade will never make another titanium face driver. And
Mm-hmm.
they've stuck with that. But at the same time, I don't know. Like, I do know that not everybody loves carbon fiber faces. I do know that they have had persistent problems with delamination and body separation that
Mm-hmm.
they've continued to work on. And so that hopefully continues to improve.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still not sold as we go into now generation 4 of carbon face as a lasting technology.
Yeah, my two biggest questions, and I agree with you. I'm always excited about a TaylorMade driver release because they have, again, history, pedigree, things that they've done exceptionally well. I'm actually, again, I tend to be in some ways more excited for the fairway woods component because of how well they've done there, and I get to dig into those a little bit. But my two biggest questions are, one, we're hearing a lot about fitting throughout the industry, and TaylorMade mentioned last year, hey, there's going to be a greater emphasis on some kind of fitting elements moving forward. So how that manifests itself, I'll be interested to see. And then secondarily, like you said, is we went red face again, blue face, and now we're into
Blue face.
this next, right, kind of this next iteration. And so, kind of the question then being, what is the story now? Like, if there isn't a clear, an obvious major performance benefit of carbon over titanium, then does it just kind of almost stall out or just kind of become this thing that's like TaylorMade's thing, even though it's not like demonstrably better, but it's a differentiator because they do it and others don't? Or does it become something like, hey, now you kind of got to fit? You got to either be somebody that really likes the carbon face, and if you do, then that's your preference to go there. If you don't, right, then we have these other options. But the other thing that hasn't happened right to date is other companies trying to mimic or look at it. And right, if something works and consumers are buying it and there's something there, don't we tend to see other companies at least poke somebody? But nobody has.
Well, I mean, look how quickly this whole 10K thing has kind of taken off, right? It's quantifiable. It's,
Mm-hmm.
as I've said, it's not for everybody, but it
Mm-hmm.
can help.
Mm-hmm.
With carbon face, the type of feedback we've heard from the rest of the industry is, to an extent, I don't know what the right word is. It's, they're sort of like, hey, great work, guys, in terms of a feat of engineering.
Sure.
Like, really tremendous that you're able to take carbon fiber, which has not traditionally been an impact material, and engineer it to the point where you get performance on par with titanium.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, I would say that the general consensus is that, you want to talk a 20-year journey or just the
Sure.
last 3+ years at retail now, a lot of work to get to where you already were a different way.
Right.
And so what we haven't seen in my mind is these incremental benefits that were supposed to come from, what was kind of described as a new starting line at the
Right.
time.
Right.
And so we haven't seen kind of TaylorMade running a completely different race.
Yeah. And that's what I want
the
to hear
rules
about.
haven't
Like
changed.
I'm interested to hear, is now that we're on the fourth iteration, if you will, of this phase, is that there, or where are we at, in terms of that kind of story? And you mentioned, right, different design philosophies. Every company has kind of its approach and flavor, and again, yeah, we have the luxury of sitting down with the R&D teams and the individual behind these, and so there is a personality to these processes. And you dug a little bit deeper on, we've had a lot of time to kind of spend with some of the GT product. We're talking Titleist, because they ran ahead a little bit, right? And they had an early fall release of the GT 2, 3, and 4 drivers and in fairway woods. And you did, you kind of dug a little bit more into what their process looks like. And I think for a lot of people, it's a mystery. So I want to start with this right away, which is, I think Titleist has a challenge in the sense that I think a lot of people assume that Titleist is only for better players. Do you think that's still the case?
By and large, no. I think there are some segments that maybe Titleist has not addressed as well as some of its competitors. So, loosely, yeah, but it's not a significant or massive part of the market, I don't think, in terms of, what people are really looking for and who's looking.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think it's more, the perception, as I touch on in the article, comes from, who tends to gravitate to Titleist. So it's, avid golfers. We talk about that 6 million that plays the most golf, that spends the most golf. That's kind of the wheelhouse Titleist customer. And with that, you have guys that, are invested, right? Travel to play golf, take lessons, know launch monitor numbers inside and out. And when you put those pieces together,
Mm-hmm.
very often you do end up on a better player, maybe single digit, but that may be more a reflection of who's typically buying versus who can actually play them.
Yeah. So, like, when you started digging into this, what did you find out? What were kind of a couple of your key takeaways from this investigation? Again, I don't want to steal the whole article because it's a really good read. But what jumped out
For
to
me,
you?
like, it was kind of like, all right, how does your process start? Like, what are you doing? And just talking to Chuck Golden and Stephanie Luttrell and Alan Hocknell too, were all in this conversation, and what stood out was like, we just sit back and listen. And that's kind of the luxury of the firm, non-negotiable 2-year life cycle is
Right.
They put this thing out into the world. Right? So put GT out in the world. And now we're going to sit back and we're going to hear what people have to say. What worked really well, what needs to be improved. And then, the next piece of the conversation is, all right, how do we improve that? What can we do from very often a material standpoint, a process standpoint that's going to get us there?
Mm-hmm.
And that was, again, this whole idea of listening it seems obvious. But you and I have been in situations where we are being presented a product that is going to launch in, let's say, a month, right? It's going to hit the market in a month. And we're kind of looking through windows, and they're already starting to test the next generation.
We've accidentally seen some things too at times where, it's like,
Right,
oh,
and you're like, okay, cool. I get that there's overlap and it's an ongoing process, but
Sure.
but how do you really know what needs to go into the next one before anybody, or at least a lot of people, have had a chance to spend time with kind of the new one?
yeah.
And so I remember I had a conference back when Nike was in business. We were, they're presenting the new driver. and at times they get tripped up and they're kind of misspeaking and
Sure.
talking afterwards. He's like, yeah, like just this one's pretty good, but the one that's coming next year we're really excited about. And you're like,
yeah,
but how do you know? And so that extra year, that 2-year cycle, really gives them a chance to kind of learn and figure some things out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of the first things that jumped out to me is that, right? And I'm not saying 1-year cycles are inherently bad or that's not a good way to do it, or what, every company kind of does it their way based on their philosophies. But like you said, when you start looking at, like, if you want to launch a driver every 12 months or so, right? And the design process, the R&D process, like you said, you kind of have to run ahead a little bit, where maybe you're starting to design things around goals or objectives that you think are going to be most important, and you kind of have to determine what some of those are before maybe taking a bunch of feedback. And maybe that works. I mean, maybe you end up hitting that target and it ends up lining up, but invariably sometimes it won't, right?
Yeah, there are absolutely times, and this is likely true for Titleist too, where you kind of know like what the next big thing is, right?
Sure.
Or this new piece that you want to integrate into the design,
right?
And it's just not ready yet.
Like the face technology, we mentioned that
right
in there. We looked at stuff. They had a certain type of titanium. I think it was like the 6.4, but they had this new one, the ATI, something like, man, they just couldn't figure out the way to make it work in that current generation. But it's kind of like, hey, we got to find a way to work with this material more significantly at some point. It might be the next one. It might be the next one. But this material is going to have some benefit for us somehow. So, yeah, that's part of the future plan regardless, because who's not going to say they don't want a driver like, oh, I don't want one that's a little bit faster and more forgiving. Like, right? Nobody's going to say that. So there you go.
For sure. Yeah, it's I mean, it was a really interesting conversation. There's some stuff we've talked about before with just the extra effort, I think is a fair way to categorize it, that Titleist goes through to qualify things like shafts and grips and make sure that anything that goes into a Titleist is going to meet a quality standard. And so, as I've said more than one time, like if there's a grip that's relatively well known in the marketplace, if there's a shaft that is anything but the most obscure and niche product in there,
right,
if you can't get it from Titleist, there's probably a really good reason for it. And that reason is going to be that something like, yeah, maybe it performs, but the paint doesn't stay on it. Or,
right,
it's on a pitch count and snaps after 150 swings or things like that. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a different approach. Like you said, everybody's kind of feels their way through it to an extent, but
yeah, and like I said, if let's say you had to sum these up really quick, like there was an infographic, right, of the major brands and their philosophy on club design. What would you say is Titleist? How would you sum up their design philosophy on metal woods? 30 seconds or less.
Every detail matters. And that's, the downside of that can be problematic is there's not one thing. There is seldom one thing, or, even for example, when ATI came out, right? Like we're talking about this ATI face, but there's a whole lot of other things that are of equal importance. And so that's it. It's, as Steph Luttrell said during the conversation, it's, it's not one thing. Everything is the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the little tweak I would put on that, which, and this sounds so not odd to say this, but if we went back to the 9 series, 9, 15, 9, 17, etc., and we push pause on that conversation and went right now to today, what I'm about to say would be like, no way, that's not true. But to me, their design philosophy is balance without compromising speed. They're not going to take a reduction in ball speed to accentuate any other area. They feel like they can achieve performance by nibbling at these other areas as needed. It's part of the reason they have 4 models, I think, but they're not going to compromise speed. So that was not the case at Titleist at one point in time. I think that is most certainly the case now, and we saw that with, I'm going to go back to TSR3, again, which kind of their last full titanium model now, but look at how well TSR3 tested in its second year. So what would have been, its back half, right, of its product life cycle, it still held up incredibly well. And you look at the ball speed numbers, again, they don't lie. So I would say if I were to associate Titleist with something, it would be drivers that are going to always have enough horsepower now to compete, and then balanced features kind of beyond that.
Well, and I think, to build on what you said, I don't, ball speed is obviously the end product, but it's speed in general. So you can kind of laugh and go, TS, Titleist Speed Project, whatever, right? But it's ball speed, but it's also club head speed and aerodynamics and really trying to continue to push the limits of helping golfers swing the club faster, because there's no USGA regulation on that. There's nothing that governs the aerodynamic performance
only
of a golf
plane
club.
and shape, right? Like these kind of nebulous terms, but yeah.
And so when you talk about ball speed, so that's face technology, CG placement, right? That's going to be that's high on the list, and then
but it's
aerodynamics.
Also how fast you can swing the club,
right? And aerodynamics, again, part of that same story, very important to Titleist. And once you say, hey, speed is important, CG location is important, we're not going to compromise on that, and we know kind of where the range is, where we want to be, and we're not going to move out of it.
Right.
If you say aerodynamics are extremely important to us, we're not gonna move away from something that isn't aerodynamically efficient, aerodynamically beneficial to golfers. With those two things, that it to an extent takes some things off the table.
Sure.
Not that Titleist wants to make a super high 10K MOI driver. They're definitely not in that camp. That's, they're very much
probably won't hear that from
there's
them,
only
right?
so much you need. Everything else is diminishing returns, but you cannot get to 10K with a CG location that Titleist is trying to achieve. You cannot get to 10K with the aerodynamic shapes that Titleist is trying to achieve. So you make of that what you will, but again, it's, and what Chuck Golden said in the conversation too is like, I'm not knocking anybody.
Right.
It's just not us.
Yeah. Well, and in all fairness, before people get out their torches and pitchforks like, oh, you love Titleist, this, that, whatever, da, da, da. Love golf equipment. And we're going to, when we have the opportunity, we've been able to spend more time personally with GT stuff and dig into it because it's been out for several months. And again, putting it through the paces. Will we do that with the other ones? Yes, absolutely. Once we have an opportunity to figure out what QI35 is all about and see, and if the new face technology or whatever it has is, we'll dig into that. Same thing with Ping, same thing with Callaway, etc. And, let you know what we think. They're just obviously have not had those ones in hand yet. But you mentioned this in the article too, where we're kind of getting into this window of say $600 to $650. So new driver comes out, kind of floor ceilings. We don't know exactly what some of these are going to be priced at, but that's a reasonable estimation. 6 million golfers out of the 25, 26 million, whatever, they raise their hand, say, yep, 90% of the money that's spent out there is going to come from us. We're going to pay that $600, $700, whatever. There are some people that don't want to spend $600 or $700 on a driver. So take the new sub 76, the new sub 70 series.
859.
859. It's not $600. It's not $859 either. Let's not wait. That's the number. Can a DTC brand like Sub 70 keep up with TaylorMade, Callaway, Ping, Titleist, Cobra, others in the driver space? Does this 859 series get it close enough where now we got a real competition on our hands?
Well, I mean, look, in the DTC space, price is what's driving it. And yeah, there are some guys that out there who are always going to, be champions for the little guy. They're going to support the little guy. But, realistically, right, if sub 70 enters the market at $600 or $650,
right,
we're probably not even having this conversation.
Sure.
Like, why?
Right.
Why? Because let's be honest, they don't have the resources of a TaylorMade, of a Callaway, of a Titleist, or even a Cobra. And so it is a smaller operation for sure.
Yeah.
But what are these, $399? you're spotting me $250. Now it's something to talk about, especially be interesting to see what happens. But I talked about TaylorMade's sims starting to dry up. That doesn't mean that, original Stealth or something else may backfill in its place.
Sure.
But big OEMs are not publicizing $300 drivers, even if you can get previous models for that price.
Sure.
The exception perhaps being Mizuno, which I don't know if we've talked about it yet, but they're going to ride $300 for a year.
Yeah, they're going to.
The Mizuno drivers are going to be $300. So, that's
deal.
Another piece of it.
Right.
Sub 70 Mizuno. Now I'm paying less still for
paying half
a bigger
of what
OEM
I would for
product.
a new one.
Yeah.
But am I getting so like? I guess that's one of my questions. Like, the more that I hear about things this year around fitting, and we're hearing a lot of this already, and ways that again, I think of it kind of like that car commercial where I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Cars.com. Doesn't matter. But there's 30,000 cars on a screen, and then you hit sedan, white, four-door, and it just selects down until you get to the exact one model you want with the exact features. Boom. Okay, that's awesome. I feel like I'm hearing that more and more from large manufacturers, which is, hey, if we can get a 1/10 of a mile an hour ball speed, that's awesome. If we can increase MOI ever so slightly, again, things that directly tie to performance for everybody, that's awesome. But here's another way to get to performance. If there are 30,000 combinations of driver, whatever out there, how can I get you in the exact one that is better or is absolutely best for you? If that's kind of what we're talking about here, does that mean that we're starting to hit a ceiling on some of the performance face technology, that kind of stuff, that would allow a DTC like a Sub 70 to be better able to compete on just those performance metrics alone?
We talk like the USGA limits have been set for quite some time, and there was an initial point where you could get 10 more yards, and then it narrowed, and right, you're talking about half a mile an hour, and again, like Titleist will tell you, well, we can get you a half a mile an hour through aerodynamics, and another half through face technology, and another half
and
with
a 10th through this,
right, and get it to add up. But that said, that gap is narrowing.
Can I call it aggregate incrementalism, Tony? Can I call it
that? There you go. So that gap is narrowing, and as it gets harder, right? Kind of more of a slog to really innovate and bring new performance to the table, at least in terms of conforming. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's easier for the little guy to catch up in terms of performance. Now, the thing I will say, and that I always wonder about, is look at that price point, right? What type of quality control are you getting from the factory, right? Where are your CTs consistent from one part to the next? Things like that, and that's a little trickier to quantify.
Sure.
But to an extent, you kind of get what you get, because that's one of the other things too. We talk about, like, where is actual performance coming from? Well, we kind of developed some new processes, and we got better at quality control. And so, if our curves look like this,
right,
we just kind of bump them a little bit to the faster side. Yeah, give them a little nudge. And so, if you're like this, you can't really make that nudge. So that's typically, where the differences are found in a lot of ways. I will say I'm impressed by the fact that Sub 70 is working with Bob Reniger. Mm-hmm. Longtime club guy. We've known Bob for years. Great guy, smart guy. He once said us, like, we were talking about wedge testing with him way back, and he sent like this protocol, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. If I could run our wedge test like this, it would be absolutely phenomenal. The issue being is it would have taken, with the number of wedges we test, the number of testers we have, it would have taken a full season just to test wedges.
We'd still be on SM8.
It's probably 6. But, they brought in Bob, and they have now some patent pending face technology that kind of a little bit of a different take on bulge and roll, if you will. So axis of rotation technology. You can read more about it in the article. So that's impressive, because you don't see that a lot with with DTC brands when
No.
you say, all right,
No,
cool,
proprietary
right?
technology.
You've developed all of this, you've engineered all of this, you've done all of this stuff. Where's the breakthrough? Where's the patent? Where's the thing that's never been done before?
Right.
And very often that thing does not exist.
Yeah,
So
where's the
now at least we
differentiator?
have
Yeah.
something. Yeah, we have a differentiator, a unique, presumably unique and proprietary sub 70 technology. So that is intriguing. If I'm gonna tell you the thing I don't like, and you bet I'm going to, we're talking a lot about aerodynamics and some of the stuff that Cobra and Titleist are doing, and keeping those soles plain in shape and without any kind of dips and dives and forward facing trips and anything that can disrupt airflow over the body of the club head during the golf
that air
swing.
to stick tight.
And I look at this and I'm like, okay, it was not on the radar.
Yeah.
Very much not on the radar.
Not a
You look at
design
that
priority.
deep old school slot, right? These kind of these dips and grooves that, don't get me wrong, this looks cool. It absolutely looks cool. But,
Well,
you know,
and in all fairness
time.
too, right? Like, aerodynamics are important, no doubt. We know that they do tend to, they're linear in the sense that, like, hey, let's say it's 10%, you get whatever. Well, if I swing it at 80 miles an hour versus somebody swings it at 110, that 80-mile-an-hour swinger is going to notice that they get less. And so if I look at the typical buyer and I look at just an average swing speed, etc., in that person's testing, are they going to miss that mile, 0.75 miles an hour of swing speed? Or are they going to look at that and say, hey, I'm willing to maybe give up that and save the $300?
Yeah, for sure.
And
again, if the technology, if this art face works as it's supposed to, and
yeah.
you paint between the lines more often and keep more balls in the fairway, more balls in play, then okay, maybe I'm willing to give up a little bit to get that.
If it's a yard, it's a yard. People are like, I don't care. It's a yard, and $300. I'll save the $300. Do you have any idea how many pints of Ben and Jerry's that is? I'll save the $300, right? So there's a lot of people. I mean, and that's, like I said, that's part of the reason DTC exists, is the opportunity to cut out the middleman, create value, and 6 million people do 90% of the buying or whatever. But okay, the other 19 million people need golf clubs too, and where are they going to get them, and how are they going to get them? And Sub 70 has absolutely figured out how to create a clientele and service-based model that addresses the
customer service, absolutely otherworldly.
Absolutely, they kill it there. So I'm intrigued. I'd say I'm more intrigued by this driver from them than I have been on any of the ones.
Oh yeah. And first of all, there are very, very few DTC companies, even small companies, but DTC companies in particular, that even bring drivers to the market, because it's like there's a lot that goes into it. And again, you're working with factories because you're not doing this 100% in-house. Let's be real. And it takes a whole lot to bring something to market that isn't going to be embarrassing, that can actually compete and is going to fit somebody and is going to, for some golfers, actually outperform, as we have seen in the past from Sub 70. We've had guys that absolutely kill it with Sub 70 drivers. So kudos for them for getting out there and competing, and especially at this price point. Some things I would look at for next time for sure.
Stay tuned.
But that's also, again, working with factories, you tend to be a few years behind, and in recent years we've seen like this shift towards the aerodynamics, keep it clean, keep it smooth. Next time. Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, testing, like I said, that's why we test. We'll see what happens, but I'm certainly intrigued. And man, we are getting up on the holiday season. Things are happening. We're going to have opportunities to dig way deeper into more of the equipment as it comes out. Stay tuned for all this.
We have as of right now,
just
under 50 products on the.
Is that it?
50, yeah, and that that's treating drivers and fairway woods separately, for example.
As they should be.
But not fairway woods and hybrids separately.
No,
it's basically our story count, if you will, from starting on Thursday, which will be tomorrow for you watching this on day one. Like that'll be the first big drop of the year. Until the last one I'm counting is Golf Pride on February 1st.
So between now and Feb 1, 50 new products.
Just under 50 50 things to write about. Yeah. So we're going to be busy, but
I better get to
as
work.
always, this time of year, it's pretty exciting for
Yeah.
guys who love golf gear or just want to hear about
Yep.
new stuff.
It's almost like Christmas in December. I mean, here we go. You know,
Almost.
With that, find us, follow us, let us know your questions, all of those kind of things. Until next time, be out.